Hey, Jesus with Jesus. Today we're going to talk about Deuteronomy 11:16-22 and pizza cheese curds. That's right. Now, sometimes you get that pizza that's a little bit burnt or maybe it's a little bit soggy, not just right. Sometimes it's ooey gooey goodness on top of that crisp crust. And then you think about your relationship with God. And you wonder, am I in good standing with the Lord or am I in threat of being burned? Well, let's take a listen in to hear what Deuteronomy 11 has to say about that very thing. Take care lest your hearts be deceived and you turn aside to other gods and choose to worship them. Then the anger of the Lord will burn against you. He'll shut up the heavens so that there will be no rain, and the land will yield no fruit, and you'll perish quickly off the good land that the Lord has given you. So you'll move away from those good-tasting pizza cheese curds that we got from Med's Heartland Creamery, and you'll get into that burnt, not-so-good relationship with the Lord, right? The reason for that is because you have turned away from God. You're no longer following His laws, His statutes, and you've turned to other gods. You've made for yourself idols, which is putting something else before the Lord. And so how many times in your life can you think about it where you've actually put something before God, where you chose to do something because it pleased you or made you happy as opposed to being something that would serve the Lord and maybe make Him happy at that point in time? And so we see here that Israel is learning how the Lord wants to have a relationship with them. So that the anger of the Lord is not burning against them. And He gives them some really good instructions here of what this relationship is going to look like as Him being their God and them being His people. So let's take a look here. Verse 18, Deuteronomy chapter 11. You shall then therefore lay up these words of mine in your heart and your soul. You shall bind them as signs on your hands. They shall be as frontlets between your eyes, and you shall teach them to your children, and you shall take them while you are going on the way, while you are sitting at your house, when you lie down and when you rise up. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Okay, so we see here that the Lord is very clear that His law, His commands, His relationship with how He wants to be their God and wants them to be His people is to be lived out in their lives each and every day. It's not something that's to be forgotten over a period of time where you go like 6 days and, I didn't do my check-in with God. No, God says when you go to bed, when you wake up, just like Martin Luther taught us, to pray the Lord's Prayer when we go to bed, when we wake up, to say the Creed when we go to bed, when we wake up. Remember and remind ourselves who that God is and what it is that He's doing in our lives. Why? So that we can see that He is our God, that we remember Him first and foremost above other things. If we're waking up and we're doing other things before giving Him the time, have we really made Him to be God, or we have made that other thing that takes precedence or is more important to be the thing that has become a God in our life? And He says very importantly here in verse 19, teach this to your children, right? And so this has been passed on from generation to generation to generation for thousands of years of parents teaching their kids who God is, how God is present in their life, how He's been providing for them, the ways in which they've seen the Lord at work with them as He's given them His word and His commands. And so again, this is Deuteronomy. This is in the Old Testament where the people of God are learning from the teacher and learning from the Lord. This is how you are to live out your lives. And then it says that your days and the days of your children may be multiplied in the land. Now, specifically in Deuteronomy, He's promising them what we call the promised land. A land that is to come, as we talked about yesterday, with that milk and that honey that's flowing in the day before. But this is where the Lord has promised that He has sworn to the fathers that they would be going. As long as the heavens are above the earth, they'll be able to dwell in that land and be with the Lord. And it says, for if you are careful to do the commandments that I command you to do, loving the Lord your God above all things and walking in His ways as relationship with one another, and hold fast to Him, then you will take possession of that land. And so we see that they were inappropriately able to keep this. They could not do it. And that's a little bit wrong words of saying there, but they were not able to keep God's commands as God would have them do. right? And so that took them needing a Messiah to come to fulfill their half of the relationship as well. And so the Messiah, the promised Son of God, comes, and then they're able to be restored to a right relationship where he is being their God and they're being his people, and they're living as God would have them intended, because Christ is covering over their sins and making a sacrifice for their sins so that they can be right with the Lord for all eternity. And so we too gain that then as believers in Christ, that now we eternally get to go and spend our lives with the Lord.